Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well this end of the week. Today we will have quite a discussion. We're going to talk primarily on climatology and astrology, but we have some other topics that I think Senator Black wants to get into, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to him.
Well, thank you, Morgan. It's always nice to see you. And you're in Detroit now?
Right now, I'm actually in New York.
New York, okay. Morgan is a world-class activist, and she is everywhere all the time. So it's hard to keep up with
I try to stay busy.
so we're going to talk about is climatology really as reliable as astrology and the study of horoscopes and that sort of thing. But first, I want to start with a little bit of a lead in because Mike Huckabee, who is the U.S. ambassador to Israel, said something I really am uncomfortable with. He made the statement, "You don't stand with Israel because you agree with their government. You stand with Israel because Israel is standing for a tradition of the God of Abraham." So I think what's happening is Mike Huckabee is an evangelical, kind of a very prominent leader of the evangelical movement, and I think he senses that among Christians in the United States there is a grave uneasiness with what Netanyahu and the whole Jewish state is doing right now. So I got to say, I'm sorry, Mike, but I'm not really sure that when you say that you and I worship the same God. I mean, we do, but I don't think his interpretation is appropriate. Jesus Christ was the new covenant. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And he was merciful. He was incredibly merciful, forgiving. And the Israelis are cruel and merciless. I don't think he would condone the kneecapping of teenagers, which I have watched go on for decades now. Whenever there's a protest, the Israelis use snipers, and they deliberately will kneecap young people so that they will be crippled for life, and there'll be a drain on their families to care for them throughout their life. This is a policy of Israel. I'm sorry, it just is.
Yeah.
So I don't think Jesus would condone kneecapping of teenagers, the systematic destruction of hospitals. For, as you know, Morgan, the Israelis have just very systematically destroyed one after the other hospital, clinics, any way that people can get relief from their wounds, the pains, and so forth. He's destroyed every place of worship, every mosque, and even, there was a Catholic church. Very deliberately, they pulled up tanks.
Yeah. There's a Catholic church here in the Bronx where, Jose's at. And there was a Father Harry Berry. He came to visit recently, and he went to the church, and the nuns came to greet him. They're all happy, and they asked for him to pray for the sisters that were in Gaza. The nuns in their covenant, they have been in communication with them, and those nuns refused to leave the church. They said that if we're meant to die, we're going to die with our congregation. And
God bless them. I mean, the work of the Christian churches, which are predominantly Orthodox and Catholic, although there are Protestant churches over there also, and they're all very heroic. I mean, if you're going to serve in those areas, you're the real deal. I mean, you're not just there to pass around the collection plate and make some money. You are there to with Jesus. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that, you know, they would take in that way. But anyway, the people of Gaza, because they're essentially in a concentration camp. It's very much like the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland back when the Nazis were in power, and the Jewish population was concentrated in the Warsaw Ghetto. Israel has done almost the identical thing to the Palestinian people, has just compressed them into this area where they can't travel, they can't do anything. They're blockaded from the sea, they're blockaded from the land. And so as a consequence, the only thing they can do is they can build vertically. It's the only way there's space for people to live. So the Israelis, with U.S. bombs from Biden and now from President Trump, 2,000-pound bombs, they go in and they, one after the other, systematically destroy every place that can support human life. And and then I think Jesus would not support any of that. Jesus would not support using food to bait starving people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was about 3 weeks ago, we reported that the Israeli army had gunned down 93 starving, unarmed civilians on a single Sunday, on the Sabbath. They chose the Sabbath to gun down 93 people. So anyway,
Yeah. And I'm always constantly reminded of this. Will be written in the history books. The sermon that Reverend Dr. Munther Isaac gave the Christmas in 2023 called "Christ Under the Rubble," where one of the prominent churches in Jerusalem, they had this demonstration where they had this baby Jesus just surrounded by rubble as symbolism of what's going on in Gaza, of all this pure innocence that's being destroyed and buried under the rubble from these bombs. So very poignant, and it won't ever be forgotten, and it will be cemented in history books. That very strong worded sermon by Dr. Munther Isaac.
Yeah, well, I agree, and we certainly are seeing a Holocaust in Gaza. Nobody wants to call it that, but it is certainly as deadly as anything that the Nazis ever did. And so anyway, I would just say, Mike, Mike Huckabee, please don't associate us with the notion that we stand with Israel because they're standing for a tradition of the God of Abraham. Yeah. Jesus Christ is the God of Abraham. Jesus Christ is the God of Moses. And Jesus Christ would not call us to support the genocide, the extermination, and the Holocaust in Gaza.
Yeah.
So with that, that's me pontificating a little. It's just very hard for me to accept the government's association with what's happening in Israel. So I know that many of the people that you're working with, Morgan, feel very much the same.
Yes, yeah, and I would like to extend a caution to Huckabee. He's an ambassador for the United States of America, not for Israel. I know that he's meant to keep the relations sweet with Israel. Yes, that's fine, but he's supposed to first and foremost have the interests of the United States always in his forefront. It seems like that kind of lacks in his rhetoric that he uses on the public stage.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, listen, let's get into our topic here. Climatology, it's perhaps as reliable as astrology, or palm reading, or what month were you born, and the stars are going to say this and that. A true science is where you try to understand the world around you, and you develop theories. The theory says, well, I believe thus and so, or well, it doesn't even mean a belief. It's let's test this idea. So it's not a personal thing, because you don't go into it seeking to prove a certain thing. You go in seeking to find out, could this be true? And so what you do is you take your theories and you conduct experiments, and you see what the truth is. What is it or isn't it? And then if you arrive at a conclusion, if you say that the evidence shows certain thing, then you should be able to write that up, and other scientists and other parts of the world should be able to replicate the results, the exact results of the experiment you've done. Well, the climate science begins with this kind of hokey notion that, well, if there's a little bit more carbon dioxide, I don't know, I think it's something like maybe it's 1 in 10,000 molecules, or it could even be 1 in 1,000. But anyway, it's a very small part. If it increases some minuscule proportion, then it somehow magically traps the heat, and then the temperature goes up and up. Well, I don't know whether there's any truth to the theory. I won't say there couldn't be some truth to the theory, but from the results they believe they've gotten, they have made certain predictions. And this is the type of thing you say, well, okay, if this is true, then here are the results that we will see from it. And so those results should be capable of repetition. In other words, you say, this is going to happen. By gosh, it really does happen. So with climatology, we have this idea that's emerged that that if a certain number of really well-connected scientists believe in something, and all the money flows to them, and the other scientists, they disbelieve it, but they don't get any money to fund their research, then there's what they call settled science. And the very concept of settled science is an anathema to true science. Galileo is the sort of the perfect example. Galileo had enormous challenges because he disputed the idea that was settled science, if ever there was settled science. Aristotle, who was revered by the known world, had said that the Earth was the fixed center of the universe, and the sun and the planets revolved around the Earth. And actually, there was evidence to support that. Very competent scientists would watch with their telescopes, and by gosh, you'd see, the planets would go around the Earth, and by gosh, you knew the sun was going around the Earth. You saw it every day. The sun's coming and going, and of course, the scientists of the day were arriving at logical conclusions, but their conclusions were totally wrong. And it was Galileo who was the first significant person to challenge that. He got in some trouble for doing it, but then that went on. And today, everyone understands that the Earth is not the center of the universe, and that, the planets revolve around the sun, and we revolve around the sun. But in any event, so you've got these climate scientists, and back in 1978, Leonard Nimoy, who I think he acted in Star Wars, wasn't it? Anyway, or Star Trek. I think it was Star Trek. And he was he was Dr. Spock, I think, or Mr. Spock. And Leonard Nimoy, though, he was a very, very bright guy, very respected guy in his own light. And he published a movie or whatever. And in it, he said that for 30 years, global temperatures had steadily dropped. They've been going down, down, down. And he said that climatologists predicted that we might very soon be living in a new ice age. His film went on to say that the glaciers had been expanding for 2,000 years, and that they once covered much of the United States, and that was the direction that we were headed again. And so he made predictions, and climatologists agreed with them at the time that the Earth was about to go into a new ice age. Well, I don't know why, but anyway, that all changed. And before you knew it, we had a totally new view, a totally opposite view that was 180 degrees off. Now we were going to all burn up because the world's getting too hot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so maybe the climate is changing. I'm not entirely convinced that anybody really even knows that, because the weather is always changing. And the weather has patterns that sometimes, like the Great Depression in the United States, it wasn't a dry year or a couple of dry years. It went on for 10, 15 years, the tremendous, terrible drought that was written about during those terrible times. So here are some of the things that were predicted, and these were predicted by Al Gore. Al Gore did a famous documentary in 2006. It was called An Inconvenient Truth. He made $50 million in sales in the first year. It was really, really popular. He got 2 Academy Awards. This documentary was spread through science classes all through the country. And what he said is that global warming was trapping the CO2, the increased CO2 caused by burning fossil fuels was trapping heat, and the temperature is going to go up and up and up and up. And that was going to cause all of these terrible things to occur. There are people who claim that the climate is changing, and since 1950, the temperature has apparently gone up 1.2 degrees centigrade. I have real difficulty believing that we can evaluate the temperature of the entire globe to within an accuracy of 1.2 degrees. Remembering back in 1950, how many weather stations were there? Mm-hmm. And usually they were in little cities that later on became huge cities, generating all of their own heat. So how reliable was any of this? But anyway, the climate scientists, they write papers and say we've gone up 1.2. Well, okay, so maybe we have gone up some, I don't know. But anyway, the predictions were wildly off base. The things that were said, and by the way, the climate scientists were surveyed by Associated Press, and they surveyed 100. They got 19 responses back. 100% said that what Al Gore said was correct. That his documentary was very scientifically accurate. So Al Gore said that the great Arctic ice sheet was melting and it would soon be ice free. No more ice in the Arctic. Well, for 20 years now, the ice has been stable, hadn't changed significantly. And now Al Gore went even beyond the 20 years. He said there was a 75% chance that the Arctic was going to be ice-free within 5 to 7 years. No, nothing happened in 5 to 7 years. Nothing happened in 20 years. Then they were saying the polar bears were going to be extinct. All the polar bears were dying off and they were gone. No, apparently the numbers are increasing, although the climatologists and even AI, when you research, it'll say, well, yeah, the numbers are increasing, but we think that's because we're able to track them better. And in some places, the numbers are decreasing, and others they're increasing. Anyway, there's no real evidence that certainly the polar bears are not going extinct. They then said there's going to be a massive food shortage because of the heat. Problem is that food production has steadily increased, and right now it's 55% higher than when the movie was made. And as one scientist, one responsible climate scientist pointed out, we inject CO2 gas in greenhouses to increase the production. Mm-hmm. So as CO2 goes up, plant production increases and food production. Now, the biggest thing, the one that really gets me, is the sea level. Al Gore predicted that the sea was going to rise about 20 feet. He had it down. He knew just how much the sea would rise. And but here it is, and after all of these years, and today, the climate scientists claim that sea levels have risen 3 to 4 inches. Now, measuring sea level, an average sea level across the entire globe, is a devilishly complex operation. Because if you ever go down to the beach, you're going to discover that one day you go and the sea is very, very low because of the tide. And the next day you go and it's very high. And the tides in many places will rise and fall by 10 feet. So the ocean is very difficult to measure, and to do it globally, I have difficulty believing that they can measure 3 or 4 inches for the entire ocean. But in any event, even if they're correct, then that's less than 1% of Al Gore's prediction, a prediction that was concurred with by this mass of climatologists. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we have prediction that the coastal areas would be flooded, and that there would be 100 million refugees who would flee from the rising seas. Nothing of that sort ever happened. Every once in a while, you may recall some article where they say, well, in this set of islands in the South Pacific, the water is rising and the people are having to be moved. Have you seen that, Morgan, occasionally? Something?
I don't believe I have.
Oh, okay. Well, you see it every once in a while. And what they always forget to say is that there's the bathtub principle of physics, I call it, that when you turn on your bathtub, the water doesn't stack up next to the nozzle. It's level. It goes level. Yeah. Okay. And so the idea that there are a couple of spots in the globe where the sea is rising is foolish. What's happening is there are various places along the seacoast where the ground, the seabed is going down. It's compressing, particularly around river deltas. You have this, and sometimes there'll be volcanic activity that will cause some shifting in the seabed. But you're never, ever going to have a situation where a few islands here, a few islands, or a community there. There's a community off the coast of Virginia that is gradually losing population because, it's submerging. But anyway, 100 million refugees from the rising seas never happened. There was this odd prediction by Al Gore that melting water from the Greenland ice cap would change the movement of the currents, which presently keep northern Europe warm, and that would trigger dramatic cooling. So Europe was going to cool because it would change the flow of the currents. And in fact, the weather in Europe has warmed a good bit since I served in Germany. Then there was Al Gore showed this horrifying footage of the 2005 Hurricane Katrina, and Katrina hit New Orleans, and really was very devastating. Lots of people died in that, and so he said this is just the beginning. He said that hurricanes are going to become very frequent, very, very intense. And it was almost like God was snickering down and saying, okay, guy, I'm going to have a little fun with you. Because the next thing, we just stopped having big hurricanes. Now, I mean, didn't entirely stop, but the incidence of them just sort of dropped off for some years. I'm sure they're going to increase. I'm sure we're going to have really big and really bad hurricanes again. But the most deadly hurricane we've had since 2005 was Hurricane Katrina.
And Hurricane Katrina is how much below the sea level? It's exceptionally low below the sea level. I know that aided in this, this terrible flooding and kind of demolition of the infrastructure there, as well as the levees weren't well maintained. So you're looking at something that is preventable with human intervention and technology. As man and intertwining with nature. I know that the hurricane that happened in North Carolina, a lot of the damage was the same reason. Was there was this dam that wasn't properly maintained and it broke. So it seems like, through upbuilding infrastructure and understanding where, you're vastly below sea level, you're going to have to take X, Y, and Z measures. There's these different methods you can put in place because, these hurricanes are naturally occurring, weather situation that happens on the globe, if like it or not. And there's always human intervention that can, be met to lessen some of these catastrophes that I think are not being taken. And sometimes I often think, is it being done on purpose to exploit some of this, rhetoric that, we have to invest in green energy because look at how this devastating, event that took place. And they're not acknowledging that, we could have had human infrastructure that would have enabled us to have less of a damage, or that's just kind of sometimes where my mind goes with this whole rhetoric and this movement. Another thing that I thought about is this. I had the pleasure of meeting this physicist, Dr. William Happer. He was a part of the U.S. Department of Energy, and he would often butt heads with Al Gore.
Oh, okay.
Because he would, sign off on the government contracts to approve for these new projects. And then there was this movement for a lot of these green initiatives. And he would often hammer some of these scientists, show me your evidence on, what's going to make this an actual profitable venture for the government, as opposed to just like some, little experiment you want to do. And they wouldn't be able to show him the evidence, and they would get very mad. And he was actually taken out of his position when Al Gore got into the vice presidency. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got fired because of Al Gore. If you had a differing opinion, you were gone. But you're right. New Orleans, where Hurricane Katrina hit, it's a weird place. My wife and I were at University of Florida when I had come out of the Marines and was there. And so we would go and we'd meet some friends in New Orleans. And I had never seen anything like this in my life. You would be driving on the highway to New Orleans, and the ocean at high tide and with a little stormy weather, the ocean would actually wash up on the asphalt. Kind of spooky. I had never seen, I lived in Florida, which it's very low, very, very low average altitude above sea level. But there's never anything like this where you have a storm come and the next thing, what in the world? I'm driving through seawater, not very deep, but, a little bit where the surf would blow up on it. So it's very low, and like you say, the levees were poorly maintained. The politicians took money away and used it to do whatever they were going to do. So yeah, it's so the hurricanes had been terrible going prior to the time of Katrina. You go back, the Galveston hurricane in 1900 killed 6,000 to 12,000 people. The Lake Okeechobee hurricane of 1928 killed 2,500 at least, probably more than that. There was something called the Sea Islands hurricane that hit the Carolinas in 1893, killed a couple thousand people. So we haven't had anything of that magnitude since then. Now, one of the things about Al Gore's movie is he depicted Florida. Now, Florida, like I say, it's low level. The average height is 100 feet above sea level, and much of it is much lower. It's some of it is almost at sea level. So they depicted Florida as sinking beneath the rising waters. And my legislative aide, back when he was in the third grade, which probably is going way back, around the time of Al Gore, they taught school children. They showed them the map of Florida before and after, and the one after was about a third of the size. So you have, sort of the large map of Florida. It's sort of the big peninsula, and then it was this narrow strip of land that was left. And they taught them, they said, by the time that you graduate school, so 9 years later, Florida will look like this. It will be about a third of the square miles that it started off to be. Well, in fact, the map of Florida has never varied by 1 inch in all of the years since Al Gore was making these predictions, not 1 inch. And so it was just a total hoax. In any event, that's a little bit of what's going on. Now, I just say that Since the time of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, instead of the whole world's population going into chaos and all this stuff, global GDP has risen and it's doubled since 2006. Enormous people, as you know, in China, enormous numbers of people have been moved up into the middle class from starvation, poverty. And global food production did not decrease. It's gone up by 55%. And global life expectancy, we're all going to die, we're all going to burn up, we're all going to starve and so forth. Life expectancy has gone up by 6 years. Now, that's a tremendous increase in life expectancy. And so I think the bottom line is when government decides to promote a scientific theory, experts are going to support it because federal dollars will only support the conclusions that are desired by government. And scientists stake their livelihoods on confirming the conclusion that yes, global warming is really the answer. There's no federal money for the predicted ice age. Now the money is all on the other side. And as you mentioned, there are scientists, very fine scientists, who were fired because they didn't buy into this idea of global warming.
Yeah, I would encourage anyone to go watch a lecture by Dr. William Happer. He talks about, CO2 is one of the building blocks of life. So with it being pumped into the atmosphere, you do have a higher influx of trees that are being grown. And it's not being talked about because that's kind of the, to use an ironic term, inconvenient truth.
It is an inconvenient truth.
To this narrative that I think has ultimately found its way at stifling innovation for African countries, for countries that are developing, that they have to take this route of renewable green energy that stifles their growth, that doesn't allow them to be competitive at the world stage like they would like to. And instead of taking like a nuclear energy or fossil fuels approach at building their economy up. One thing that, the UN just opened up recently, so I've been down there calling attention to what's going on in Gaza. And you see this pin on everybody, and it's this rainbow circular pin, and it's about sustainable energy. So it's this groupthink that you have to get on board to be at this table. It's absurd. But it kind of and when I was in the meeting with Dr. William Happer, he even alluded to this, that the scientists that he has discussions with, that they play along because a lot of the experiments that need to be done need government contracting for funding. So they have to play this game of following this overarching narrative that everyone's supposed to agree with in order to remain in the club, which is very alarming, but that's kind of the situation that we've been put into. It's a very interesting discussion, and how I feel about it is that it really hinders a lot of primarily African nations from truly finding their independence and being an actual competitive state in this global economy.
Yes, there is no energy more cost effective and reliable than coal. And to me, the free market should determine what energy is used. But the fact is that if you look at it, China, which has become the factory powerhouse of the entire world, has 1,200 coal-fired power plants as compared to the United States. We have 200, so we have a sixth of what they have in China, 1/6, and they're increasing to the point where in just in the single year, 2024, last year, China started as many new coal-fired power plants as half of the entire number of power plants in the United States. And a power plant lasts 50 to 100 years. I mean, if you want them to last, they'll last. Some of them are, the figures say, say 50 to 80 years, but there really is not an expiration date on the power plants. You can go for 100 years, I'm sure. And so the idea that China in 1 year begins to build half of our entire capacity in the United States really tells us something. And it tells us why we're falling behind so rapidly in factory production. Mm-hmm. Because energy is a foundational input to any product. And if you don't have inexpensive energy, reliable energy, then your products are going to cost more. We're seeing that in Germany, where natural gas from Russia was used in the Haber process that converts natural gas and air into ammonia, and then ammonium nitrate, fertilizer, and then all kinds of chemicals. And in Ludwigshafen in Germany, they have 2,000 chemical factories in that one place, more than anywhere else in the world. And Joe Biden authorized the destruction of the Nord Stream undersea pipelines, and we're still trying to blame it on everybody else in the world. That anybody who will believe some theory, they throw something out and try it. But it was very well documented that under Biden, U.S. Navy divers planted the bombs, and they were remotely detonated. But when that happened, it increased that vital input of natural gas, not for power. It wasn't for power. It was for chemical processes, and it raised the cost of that sixfold. And so, as a consequence, Germany, which was intensely competitive, suddenly is non-competitive, and you have poverty, you have homelessness in Germany, which you never had. I mean, you'd have to go back to the great inflations of post World War I to find anything like that. And so anyway, we need to be very skeptical of the whole global warming business. I'm pleased to see that the Trump administration is treating it with disdain, which is very well deserved. So I do agree with them on that particular topic. Well, Morgan, thank you for what you're doing with, bringing attention to the plight of all of the poor people who are being slaughtered, being starved, being gunned down in Gaza. I would tell Mike Huckabee that I think you are doing God's work, not the Israelis.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure doing the show with you, and getting a chance to kind of highlight what's happening in Gaza is always very, very important. Especially, like we had touched upon, this is, when the UN is, just now wrapping up its general debates where all the world leaders come in and give their speeches on their kind of their worldview and how they want things to go this time, or this semester, or whatever it's called at the UN. I'm not sure what they refer to it, but this duration of when they're all supposed to be doing good work. So it's important that we keep our eye on that. Another important thing that I wish people would make a mention of is that there is this resolution that the UN, that a lot of people who have been very active in calling out what's happening in Gaza, the genocide. It's a Resolution 377A, which goes over the Security Council. I believe the Colombian president came to town. I want to say it was Wednesday or Thursday, pardon me, and he gave this, this cry out to the other nations that they need to call for this resolution and override the Security Council to try and bring in the blue helmets of the UN to stop what's going on in Gaza. You have that, and you have the Freedom Flotilla, where you have over 50 civilian ships. One of them is a ship full of American veterans on their way to Gaza right now to provide a human corridor to provide aid. And within that, you have naval ships from Spain and Greece, and
Really?
and I believe Libya is sending a hospital Navy ship to transport and allow the safe passage for these civilian ships to enter
That
into
is
Gaza.
wonderful. I haven't been seeing that in the news.
Yeah, they've been keeping it very quiet because it is exceptionally historic.
I mean, the world has risen up against Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and the United States supports Israel. Is there another country? Well, Germany is sort of in this,
Mm-hmm.
either they support them or we make bad things happen to them. That's really, they don't have any choice.
Strong arming, yeah. But it's I think the writing is on the wall as we see what's happening in Gaza. Like our guest that was with us a few weeks ago, Colonel Aguilar, everything that he said, that he saw the plans that's coming to fruition, and it's being accelerated because I think Israel knows that their time to do this is as rapidly approaching its end. As far as the international condemnation goes, so they're making sure they can get this done to the point where there is no turning back. So nonetheless, there should still be condemnation and sanctions, and never let that stain be forgiven for a very long time, without some kind of form of justice. But
yeah. And one other good thing that just recently happened is that President Trump, while he's been very supportive of this whole thing with Gaza, he did draw a line with the West Bank. The West Bank is occupied. It's a Palestinian area occupied by Israeli armed forces, and Israel encourages the settlement. So they send Jewish people over to steal the property of the Palestinians, where they happen to be Christians or Muslim. They're told to go there to steal, and they go in, and often they just kill people, so that they can steal their lands, and they destroy. One of the I really have a thing about trees. I plant trees and I nurture the trees, and the trees over there are olive trees, and they're growing in a very arid area, and the olive trees are there forever. I mean, for hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't know how old they get, but the Jewish settlers go in and they'll cut the bark around and kill the tree, and these are trees that, just got some peaceful farmer, some old fella who's nurtured these things all his life from the time he was a little boy, and all of a sudden he's got some nasty, hate-filled Jewish fellow who comes in and just cuts a band around the tree, and there's nothing he can do. You can't fix it. Once that happens, you just have to watch the tree die.
Yes, that, and I know that they systematically will poison the livestock, all these very, very evil actions that need to be called out and put a stop to. But we'll have to dive into this deeper at a further date. There's so much more we could talk about with this issue, and I want to thank you, Senator, for giving us your time today and your expertise. And and having us talk about this other topic about climate change. And I think you made a really great mention at the end, where I think sometimes when we enter the space and we talk bad about, okay, or we're calling out this hoax of climate change, it has this connotation that we don't care about the environment. When that's not the case. We believe that we should be proper stewards of the environment and caring for the environment and not polluting it. But we're calling out this mass hysteria that, in my opinion, just stifles innovation, and kind of creates this hysterical lens of a population that doesn't seem that they think they have a future.
Yeah, it's actually very destructive. Environmentalism is very destructive of nature. I'm a conservationist. Spent more time than you could possibly imagine wandering the Everglades, or I used to be wandering the Appalachian Mountains until my snake hunting buddy got bitten by a timber rattlesnake and died. And so I love nature and very much respect it. But I can't think of anything worse than to have these gigantic windmills. I think about the Purple Mountains majesty, and all of a sudden you got these huge industrial propellers, whirling around, chopping up bird life and everything. And then you have, with these solar arrays, you'll have, acres and acres of blistering hot, barren nothing. Nothing lives around these solar places, and they're chopping down the trees and the plants and killing off all the wildlife in order to put them there. I hate this stuff. It's because I love nature, and I spent a lifetime nurturing. We go into the Everglades. We never hurt anything. We never killed anything. We didn't take a gun. I respect people who hunt. I don't have a problem, but I'm just saying when we left, everything was the way that we had found it. We just, we didn't leave many footprints. So anyway, well, thank you so much for helping me tonight, Morgan.
Of course, yes.
Thank you for everything that you're doing. I can't tell you how much I respect it.
Well, I extend my gratitude back at you, and I will conclude this by asking everyone to tune in next week for Focus on the News.
Thank you.